Welcome to Maintenance Matters, a podcast by Marshall Institute, capturing conversations with industrial maintenance and reliability professionals about their successes, challenges, and stories. Enjoy the episode.
This is Greg Foltz. I'm President and CEO of Marshall Institute, and today I'm really excited to have Tony Leombruno on the phone with me or on the video blog with me to discuss his PM optimization program and some of his journey in maintenance improvement. So good morning or afternoon, Tony. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Greg. I'm doing great.
Great. Hey, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, just a little bit about your background and some of your achievements in maintenance and reliability world?
Sure, absolutely. So name's Tony Leombruno. Currently work for a metal packaging company. Been with this company for 5 years in a corporate TPM champion role. Prior to that, my maintenance career has been in either project management or maintenance management, mainly in steel and forging. So that's the bulk of my time has been in, like I said, steel mills and open closed eye forge mills. Loved everywhere I've worked. Really like the job I do now. It's a much cleaner environment working in a place that makes containers that people put food and beverages in. So it's night and day. But went through the MRM modules, graduated, I think 3 years ago now. Got my CMRP certification at the end of the last module, just renewed. So it's been 3 years, which is hard to believe. And really the focus has been really driving our reliability culture and improving the way we perform maintenance and conduct maintenance, and the culture of maintenance reliability here at the organization I work for now. Marshall was real instrumental in really providing the means to do that. So you guys kind of, as I went through the different modules, I was able to, kind of check mark, yep, that's going to be an initiative. That's going to be the next initiative. It kind of helped me roadmap out the next couple of years. So thank you.
Awesome. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So it's an exciting program. I mean, the maintenance reliability management diploma that we do jointly with NC State is just, as you know, we get just an amazing amount of people that cycle through there, get some really phenomenal relationships, I think, established in that class. So, Tony and I share a lot of similar background. Tony's driving some TPM activities and overall maintenance excellence deployment, part of an operational excellence group. That was my background when I was with SKF Bearings, was maintenance and reliability, moving into TPM, total productive maintenance, and then moving into the continuous improvement, overall operational improvement kinds of stuff. So we've been comparing notes a little bit, and I'm excited. But we're going to kind of narrow down a little bit into the topic of PM optimization. So Tony, just talk to us a little bit about PM optimization and what it is for you at your organization, and kind of just to set the ground.
Sure. So for me, it was when I first started, there's some acquisitions and new plants, and it's really kind of bringing the whole funnel of speaking the same language, maintenance types, implementing a CMMS, things like that. But the next obvious step was when we started migrating data from our PMs into the system, we had a lot of, I'm sure nobody else has this, a lot of check this or that, replace, repair as needed. Well, when I see stuff like that, I wonder, well, what does that mean? You ask 20 different people, you get 20 different answers. So PM optimization to me was really ultimate goal is to have a process in place to find failures before they occur, and find them and eliminate them. But to do that, we had to really come up with a program and a system, and using what I learned at Marshall, took that back to the basically have a steering team from maintenance reliability represented from each of the plants. And we did a train the trainer type course where we really want to identify, the task, does it address a failure, possible failure, and then, take subjectivity out. Say specifically what you want to have checked or looked at, how are you going to do it, what's the pass fail criteria, and if it fails, what do you do, what's the, the action plan. And then, so you start to tie in some predictive other things later. But once we trained that initial group, each group went back to their plant, used a cross-functional approach to really look at, okay, where do we focus first? Because we have all this equipment, what's maybe critical that we start with, or what's problematic. Let's focus on those PMs first. And so that was kind of the first year was really that focus, and we started tracking it on some monthly KPIs, how many PMs did you optimize? But then we started seeing some results of some decreased breakdowns, decreased reactive activity on those assets, and really bringing the senior leadership into the conversations and adding that visibility. We actually launched a corporate PMO initiative. Our VP of operations said, okay, well, let's make this a corporate initiative and tie it to our plant performance metrics. So now the plant managers are on the hook to improve their PM programs. So then we had a corporate steering team, and each plant would basically roadmap out what they're going to focus on through the course of the year. And they would basically have to submit. We had mid-month calls. The end of the month, they'd have to submit it, make sure subject matter experts review the technical aspects. And there was a certain criteria that we trained everybody on, that here's what, when you submit your PM, here's a criteria that it needs to meet. If it doesn't, it'll get sent back. And so that was really year one. And we're into year two now. So year one, we saw great results. Year two is now looking at PM effectiveness. So really diving into our CMMS data, looking at when are we doing reactive type activity as it corresponds to the PMs. Meaning, are we, changing parts out? Are we having reactive in between the PMs? If so, why? Do we need to adjust our frequencies? Should we make that, is that a wearable component that we need to add to our PM that we plan to replace that? So year two has really been the focus, and a little bit deeper dive into the effectiveness of the PM, and really looking at data. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for.
No,
That's kind
good.
of
Yeah.
the journey right now.
There was a lot in there, and I'd like to dissect that just a little bit.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I've got it all captured, but one of the first things I heard you talk about was this idea, and one of the things I was glad to hear you say, it's something that we teach a lot, is about when you're writing a PM, to think about what is to be done, how is it to be done, what's the criteria for good or bad, what do I do when I find it not meeting the criteria, and then how do I make sure I do that whole task safely. So it sounds like you that was one of the fundamental principles that you engaged in your process, and how you were training some people. It sounds like you began to pull some data, and then I heard you talking about forming some steering committees or PM deployment teams. Talk to me about the PM teams a little bit, and kind of what you chartered them to do and what their mission was.
So the localized, or the local champs, like I said, we had the initial training of really what does PMO mean, and what are we looking for corporately, and what should we expect out of the program. But so the concept was the main maintenance reliability leader at the plant, typically your maintenance or engineering manager, goes back. And when you start looking at the PM, they'll have, and it depends on the asset you're talking about. So it's a cross-functional team. So there's operators, some of the main maintenance leads out there, the maintenance manager, production manager, and our quality manager. So really we wanted all those eyes and all those voices to have input into, is this PM actually effective, or what should it be? We didn't want to, go very linear, just a maintenance person. We wanted operations input.
Yeah.
And quality.
Well done. Well done. So if you were to think of maybe a couple of critical elements to PM optimization, what would you say are some really important things to make sure you're considering when you're doing PM optimization?
So the whole program itself, you want to make sure you have, I hate to use the word buy-in, but the buy-in from the senior leadership on down, and what the expectations are. It's not just go do PMO. It's really developing a process and procedure that really are going to be lifelong, because the dynamics of the asset are going to change over the life cycle of the asset. When we first were putting this out, we compared it to like your car. If you have a brand new car, you do different maintenance than if you had a 15 or 20-year-old car. It's just the demand changes. So you have to constantly relook and revisit and make sure, optimize your PMs, make sure you're addressing those possible failures.
And how you use that car is going to make a big difference as well, right? Whether you're driving
Correct.
off-road or highway miles, is going to make a huge difference. Same vehicle, but
Absolutely. And engage all the stakeholders in the process. Like I said, we involve quality, operations, maintenance team, safety was involved as well, because we had a lot of PM tasks that were, hey, check safety devices. Well, what we added was a granularity of, well, how many are we checking? How are we checking them? Because different people can interpret it differently. Like, check safety device, yeah, there it is. Or, hey, make sure we had an instance where there was some gates that had to be, the interlocks had to be engaged, and the guy that'd been there for a long time had been checking the same 3 for about 10 years. And then when we built the PM and we added a lot of visual elements and attachments to our PM tasks, he had made the comment that I never realized there was a 4th one on the back side of the machine. So for 10 years, we assumed we were checking safety devices, but we were missing one.
right.
So really, by having all that input, and safety brought that up into our attention, and like I said, it's having that engaged cross-functional, and then empowering that group to really drive the improvements.
One of the things that I find along that same line as the safety is lubrication is very similar to that. You got people out there lubricating the machine, and they're doing what they've been communicated to lubricate, as best they can. But there's a couple of huge things on lubrication. One, how should I do it? What type should I use? And then specifically, we found that people were missing when we pull out the diagrams and we get the right team together and we start making a map of all the lube points. It's like, oh, I didn't know that one was down in there. And oh, by the way, this one you have to lubricate when it's running the spindles. You have to check the oil level of this spindle when it's running at 4,000 RPM, so you're going to overfill it. And that's why we have oil all over the floor, is because we've been overfilling it. So it's the lifeblood. Safety is the life of what we do. Lubrication is the lifeblood of what we're doing, right? And we got to get those things right. I mean, they're so foundational and fundamental to the health of the assets. It's just incredible.
Yeah, we had same examples. We actually we attached them to the PM task groups, but then they also laminated some lube maps. Basically, we identified type of lube, amount, but then their physical location. Same thing. So we had brand new equipment. We were 4 or 5 years into running that there's a couple of Zerks that had never been hit because we didn't know.
Yeah.
A couple weren't called out even in the OEM manuals. And we just, as we were scrutinizing and really empowering the operators to go look around, they said, well, hey, we never lubed this one. Should this be lubed? Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I found was interesting was we would put a lube standard like that out on a machine. And it was always, I was always really excited, because when you hung up a lube map on a machine, and maybe you've done some really good homework, but you still might miss something, right? I mean, it's just really hard to get all the data, because machines have been modified, added, changed, and, that kind of thing. And so, we would hang a lube map out there, and somebody would come up and say, hey, you idiots, you're missing a lube point over here. And I'd be like, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
If I hadn't hung it on the machine and said, this is the 10 we know about, you never would have come up to me and said, hey, here's number 11, you idiot. And I take that with appreciation, right? I mean, and it was amazing how people, when you post information, they may come at it just to prove you wrong, or they might come at it in the spirit of trying to prove it, but that information will come out because you stated what you know. And that's a huge, powerful improvement to it.
Yes. So something that kind of made me think of some of the other feedback we got from people on the floor, especially some of our, that are tenured employees at some of our legacy plants. Greg, did I lose you? Oh, there you are. Okay.
How about that?
Yeah. So some of the feedback was they love the fact that they're part of this cross-functional team, and their suggestions and their recommendations, because these guys have been maintaining for 30 years, we're making it to the task list. And they said, hey, we knew this is the right thing to do for years. We just did it. And finally, somebody actually listening to us, and it encourages further engagement. So when I talk about the cross-functional groups, make sure they're engaged.
Absolutely.
They're listening to
And it kind of comes back to that
You start to
principle,
feel empowered.
that it comes back to that principle of what you standardize, you can improve, right? If three of us are doing it different ways, there may be a beautiful way in the midst of that, but you can't improve it because we're all doing it differently. And until we pick a way and then continuously improve that path, it's so foundational to what we do. And then it, of course, enhances organizational learning, right? The new lube technician that comes along can now, use the map to be more efficient. They may know how to run a lube gun. They may know all the ins and outs. You might have properly trained them, but you have to know how to apply that to this specific machine.
And that's part of the PMO was one of the benefits we saw were standardized work. Because you could have major deviations across different shifts and different people on the same shift. To that point, we went through that. Everything you're talking about, that was part of our process as we went along. We might not have known it up front, but as we went through, we're like, oh, okay, there's different ways to do it. What's the best way?
Amen. Great.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned a little bit about benefits that you had seen, and what I liked about some of the stuff you were talking through was that you had enough success to where some management saw it and said, "Hey, let's make this corporate. Let's expand the deployment of that." And that's very similar to the journey that I had as well. We made some early on improvements and increased the production on a particular line by 16%. It was a very important line, bottleneck, and so that those can be really instrumental in leveraging things forward. So give us some specifics, maybe, or maybe an idea of something you found that just made a huge difference to your organization.
So a lot of it was the initial, even before we started the real corporate launch, when it was really just the plant champions. We had a couple bottleneck pieces of equipment in an operation where there was a high throughput demand, and there was a constant nuisance type. And we started looking at some breakdown work orders. It was the same thing over and over again. When we looked at the PMs, we weren't even addressing those failures. And then when we started really, okay, that's going to be the focus for this plant. When we started going through the tasks, on their monthly PMs, they had 120 tasks. And we're like, all right, guys, so how many of these tasks are we actually doing? And so we actually, by eliminating the non-value add and focusing on actually what's going to find failures, we cut it down to 68 tasks, almost in half. Mm-hmm. And availability and reliability started to increase from there on. So they have a different bottleneck now, which is the focus we're on now. We've eliminated that one.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great example of number one, the bottleneck will move, right? You just open up capacity on that, and it will shift to somewhere else that needs focus and attention. So that's a great way to drive our processes as we move forward. So, it's interesting journey. So achievements, you moved the bottleneck in one example, and that had some increase in output production. Anything else? How about down to the shop? How about down to the shop floor level? Like, I'm a technician, and do you have any examples of things that on the floor were like, oh man, that's beautiful?
Yes. So I think the overwhelming feedback from the guys on the floor, the ones actually doing the PMs, it's now we have detailed descriptions. So there's a lot of newer plants, newer personnel, but even some of the senior guys, it's now the PM when it comes out, it has all the tasks I'm supposed to do. Even if it's a nice reference, but it has the parts I'm going to need. And that part, I don't have to go to the store and try to find it, because that part list on that work order has the identified part, the part number, the bin location, all that stuff, the tools that I might need. There's so when actually it's time to start wrenching, I know what I need. There's not a lot of back and forth. I can stay on the equipment and get the PM done. So the overwhelming from the guys on the floor performing the PMs has been kind of the return has been the day in the life is easier. There's less, because there's enough distractions, there's enough reactive type things that pull up and they get pulled different directions. If it gains them 15, 20 minutes back of less frustration, then it's a win. So we have some plants that are further along in the journey than others. It's really been resources and allocating the right resources to do it. But one plant that has taken off has seen from the senior leadership side, has seen, I don't know if I say specifics, but it's seen a definite increase in OEE. So the availability, reliability of the assets, because of what we're focused on now, basically the bottom line dollar has been affected in a very positive way. So,
and that's a great example. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is our maintenance and reliability practices affect the capacity of the organization to produce its product, right? We're not just taking care of equipment to make it, we're trying to extend the life and all the stuff, life and all the things that we normally try to do. But really, when you boil it down, what we're doing is we're ensuring the capacity of the organization to produce its product at a given volume. And if you fail to maintain properly, that volume will reduce. We know that's true, right? We see that in plants all the time. And so when we do effective PMs, it's one of the foundational elements to ensuring that capacity, right? Yep. Why spend a lot of time repairing what breaks down if we can prevent it, if we can do the right things? I love what you mentioned about value-added PMs. Value-added PMs versus non-value-added PMs is just a core principle that we got to focus on, because what we're doing is we're sending an individual out there to do 120 PM tasks, and they can't possibly get those done in the time that we've allotted them to do it. So what do? They pick what they think are the value-added ones, which Joe may have perfect and Fred may not have the same list of what's going to happen. So I don't know who's right or who's wrong, but I know that wrong is in the middle of that somewhere, right? Because they can't both be 100% correct. And so but somewhere, if you get the right people together, is a list of the things that you never want to miss. And if we think about failure modes, okay, how this machine fails in these ways, and the consequence of those failures, and how bad something hurts and causes impact on either safety or environment or business output, those kinds of things. There is a list. There's a short list. There's a value-added list of things that we can focus on that, man, if you miss these, you will see issues in a not too distant future. And and then the last thing about that is, in a lot of ways, what we're doing, for those that have a lean background, is we're creating standard work for PMs, right? I mean, we call them job plans in planning and scheduling, right? But a job plan is a standard for how to do a particular activity to drive more consistency and better preparation, right? Well, why wouldn't we do that on one thing I really try to get people thinking about is PMs are in your system. They're coming out every week, every day, every month, every fortnight, whatever it is. Why would we not have good job plans for those, right? That say what's to be done, how's it to be done, what's the criteria for good, bad, what do I do if I find it bad, and how do I do it safely? If I don't have those job plans put together with the parts I'm going to need to do those jobs, man, that's the perfect place to start. Right? Because it's coming out next month. You don't have to guess when this job's going to come out. It's coming out next month.
You're standardizing your evaluation of the equipment.
Yeah. What's that?
You're standardizing your evaluation of the equipment.
Sure. Yeah. So
lots subjectivity. Yeah.
Okay. So one last topic I'd just like to touch on. When we think about the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the impact on your particular facility. It's interesting, as we've been doing these interviews, some facilities, universities, schools, they're pretty shuttered, right? Or they have been for the last, 4 months or something. And, that has a huge impact on maintenance. And you go to the other end of the spectrum and you got folks that are just running wide open as a result of the new demands and can't even put our finger on it sometimes, but man, is stuff moving. Where does your business fall in the scale? And specifically, how does it affect your PMO journey, your PM journey overall? So
we're definitely on the side of increased demand, to the point where basically if we're making something that's already sold, this is record-breaking year as far as throughput. But because of that, luckily we're already so far into our PMO journey, but increased reliability and making sure our equipment's able to run when it needs to run at the speed it needs to run has become very critical. so changeovers as well, but really make sure that equipment's ready to go and can perform. A couple of years, it's not that it was bad, but it wasn't as good as it was now. And it's 2 years from now, it's going to be even better than what it is right now. But so we were kind of a little bit ahead of the curve, and luckily able to kind of absorb a little bit of that hit as far as increased demand, which is a good hit if you're ready for it. But yeah, so it's definitely kind of reinforced the focus and the concept of, even from our senior leadership on down, good thing, we need to maintain this and ensure that we don't lose sight of optimizing our PMs. And the interesting thing too now is, as we optimize PMs, having better CMMS data, even to our estimated times per task, and how long does this PM actually take? It helps us with our forecasting, better budgeting. There's a lot of ancillary benefits on the PMO. So not just the increased availability and reliability, but from like budgeting structure and even your down-day planning.
Yeah. What I find that's really interesting is, we know that PM should be a pretty significant portion of our workload if we're in a proactive environment, right? And the beauty of that is that work is perfectly predictable, right? I know how many hours it should take. I know what the history has been for how long it has taken. I know what tasks are going to come up this month, next month, a year from now if I want to look out in that range. I know what craft has to do them. So I can level load, and I can plan resourcing for all those activities. And, of course, the first step is get it right. And the second step is now use that as the ammunition to resource and budget and do all those things that you're talking about. So that's perfect. That's a perfect draw together of those concepts. So really good stuff. Yeah. So COVID has driven you to a more you're trying to put out as much as you can. Another thing I loved in what you said is, so, I run a business and I have a great team around me that helps to make good decisions. But, one of the things that you do in a business is you lay foundations that allow you to increase volume, right? So, how well in my business, how well we manage client relationships, how well we manage invoicing, and we do a job and turn around and keep cash flowing to keep the next job going, how well we manage proposals and get those things out. Those are all fundamental systems in my business. But when you think about your business, those things are there, but PMs is a fundamental system. Our ability to maintain and keep the assets running is a foundational building block that, if it's managed properly, will enable further capacity output to happen. So I applaud on having, having the support, which is huge in any of these deployments, right? Having the passion, the creativity to take concepts and apply them into your environment, and have laid this foundational path that enables this to, move forward more aggressively. And now that you find yourself in this very aggressive environment, you've got the ability to move forward. So,
it's so it's not perfect yet. It's still an ongoing process. We continue to get better, but what we like is what we've seen so far. We've seen some results, and I think it energizes the program.
Sure.
So as soon as you start to see some of that return, it's like, oh, hey, this is working. Maybe we should do some more.
And I think you just gave a great definition of continuous improvement, right?
It's not instant improvement. We always say that it's not instant, it's continuous.
Yeah, and I find that continuous improvement is always a balance of passion, right? Somebody has the vision, and if you get some leadership that supports you in that vision, it's huge. But somewhere in that system, there's somebody who has the vision, and that vision is specific to a set of principles: PM optimization, maintenance improvement, TPM, whatever those things might be. And it takes an incredible amount of persistence to push through all the obstacles that are, the system loves to be at rest the way it is. Whatever good, bad's going on out there, it's there. And when you push your finger in the water and try to make a change, it just flows back into the same configuration it was. And it takes incredible persistence to get that water moving in a different direction, right? And so you got to have that passion. You got to have persistence. It takes patience. Some people are too patient. Some people are not patient enough, right? And you've got to be in this middle ground of I'm pushing it, but I understand people have to absorb some concepts and make some things happen, and we need to be aggressive. But if you don't have the patience to allow the plant to grow, and you're tugging on it, it's gonna, you're gonna hurt the plant. You're gonna not make it there. So we got to get these things coming together in order for continuous improvement. And that's what I hear you talking about, right? Passion, persistence to make this happen, patience, and then this leadership support that you need to get in place. So I think anybody who's listening, those are some good things to go after in your continuous improvement program. And I think Tony's a great example of seeing that in place. So any final thoughts before we
No, just engage upwards, engage downwards, excuse me, and be passionate about it. If you believe in it, stay persistent. And I think what you just said is really the clear message. It's the right thing to do, and you need to make sure your leadership understands that, and then start developing your champions. Get them excited about it as well.
That's awesome, and it triggers another thing for me, which is the truth is on our side. The truth is, if you don't maintain the assets, they will fail. Physics is on our side. The physics say it's wearing out, right? And so that's one of the great things about the journey in PM optimization, maintenance improvement, TPM kinds of things. It's hard to argue that you should lubricate the machine properly. It's hard to say, well, no, we shouldn't do that, right? No, we do it all the time, right? We don't lubricate the machine properly. We take and don't have the properly trained resources. We don't have the right lube systems. We don't have the right, and you can just apply that to PMs and TPM and all kinds of things. And it's hard to say that operators shouldn't be trained properly, right? It's hard to argue that point. Now, the reality is we don't do all that well in practical application of those things, but the truth is on our side, right? The truth is that if we can improve those practices incrementally, we can make a huge difference in our plant. And we have data that backs that up. So that's exciting stuff. So, my man, I appreciate you spending some time with us, and I think some people are going to be able to pull some things from some of the stuff you said that will be pretty
hopefully useful. And appreciate you reaching out to me, Greg. Loved it. Love talking about this stuff. It's I said live it at work, but it's to your point. It's it's the right thing to do. It's going to do nothing but make life easier for everybody. So
yeah, and it does. It gets in your soul, right? It gets in your heart. And I've got people that work for us that, like, I'm thinking of one individual. He retired, and there was no way he was not going to keep talking about this stuff. And I pay him, but I'm pretty sure if I didn't, he'd do it anyhow. It's just because, and I'll tell you one thing that you see happening in people is, as they begin to see the value of good maintenance practices and solid PMs, you can't get it out of your head. If you've seen it working and you've seen it the right way, when you walk into a plant that's not doing those things, it's like walking into the dark ages or something, right? And so there all of a sudden is this juxtaposition between where things need to be and where you're seeing the reality to be. And that drives, hopefully, passionate, persistent, and a little bit of patience in continuous improving those systems. So, all right, man. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to some more offline conversations. I think you and I have a lot to share and learn from each other. So,
absolutely. Thank you, Greg.
Yep. Thank you, man.